So first of all, thank you to everyone for coming. I'm Rebecca Trigg, and I'm here with Romy, Craig, and Sarah Whiteman, who's our head of marketing at Acteon. So Romy and I are consultants for Acteon. In case you don't know much about us, we're a learning and communication agency. We're based in Cambridge. Well, we're sort of broadcasting from the surrounding villages at the moment, but normally based in Cambridge. And our organisation, we focus on helping organisations and their people achieve positive change. So we work in all sorts of areas, across all sorts of industries, anything from doing things like helping care homes with their onboarding, or compliance in broadcasting. We might do leadership with pharmaceutical companies. We might do change programmes in retail, or diversity programmes for a charity, all kinds of things. And we have clients like Co-op and Channel 4 and Boots and Merck, Wellcome Trust, HC One, all sorts of people. So we're very fortunate to have a fantastic and very varied client base. We build all kinds of stuff for our clients. It really depends on the client's objectives. It depends on the project, what needs to be done. We do things like music videos, or we might do virtual classroom sessions, or we might design escape rooms or do e-learning. And we don't, sometimes it's posters, and actually sometimes to achieve positive change, you just need a really well-placed sticker or a QR code. So, we don't just do all the fancy stuff, we do the little things as well, but it's really thinking about, we talk about the moments that matter. So we're talking about influencing behaviour at the point of people making a decision. So that's, it might be deciding whether or not someone's going to wash their hands. It might be whether you call out a risk. It might be whether or not you click a link on a phishing email, all those kinds of things. So we do lots of different things for lots of different clients. So today we're going to talk a bit about campaigns. So campaigns, it's really interesting actually with campaigns. I don't know what you all think when you hear the word campaigns. It's often associated with marketing. But we've been doing more and more campaigns in learning for clients, and been more and more popular and very successful. So today we're going to talk to you a bit about how you could run campaigns in learning or sort of change environment in your organisation. So the webinar is basically in 3 bits. So we've got Romy's going to talk a bit about the theory of campaigns. We're very lucky actually, we've got Romy, Craig, who has worked in marketing and is now using her skills for good over in learning communication world. So she's got a huge amount of experience in running campaigns. So we're going to talk to her about the theory of campaigns and why they're so good. And then I'm going to talk a bit, we're going to have a couple of case studies from some of our work with Acteon clients. So I'll do that. And then at the end, we've got some resources for you, and we're going to talk a bit about how you can start using those resources and give you some tips for actually making campaigns work in your organisation. So just to say again, please use the chat. So it's at the bottom of your screen. We're going to stop for questions at the end. So please just keep putting your comments in, and we'll be able to see them. And if we don't get to your comment, we're very happy to pick up on a separate chat another time. But anyway, enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Romy. So she's going to talk a bit about the theory of campaigns. So Romy, over to you.
Thank you. Morning. Thanks everybody for joining us. So as Rebecca said, we're here today to talk about campaigns, and my background is running advertising campaigns for lots of different UK brands. But I think the thing that I really want to get across today is that demystifying, because the way that I go about running a campaign and planning a campaign for an Acteon client within the learning and development or internal comm space is exactly the same as to when I was planning a big Christmas TV campaign for the post office, for example, because at the end of the day, you want to get to the same type of goal. I think for a lot of people here, a lot of what we're going to say isn't going to be new to you. There's going to be a lot of things that you're like, well, actually, yeah, I kind of already think of it in that way. But what we'll hopefully do is put a little bit of structure around that, give you a few hints and tips to go a little bit deeper, give you a bit of a process, and that will help you as you develop your own campaigns. So first question, what is a campaign? So a campaign, essentially, it's when you use one creative approach and a consistent message across different channels over a period of time. So that's pretty much what it is. Like we said, it's associated with advertising, but exactly the same principles can apply to learning, can apply to internal comms. You might have different channels. You'll almost certainly have different budget. Although saying that, marketing budgets aren't always all you think that they're going to be. But you've got the same goal. You will have the same type of goal as somebody selling something or trying to persuade you to get involved in something or change something you want people to know about, to understand and to take action on something. I've just popped in here just as an example, just to show the difference as to why a campaign is different from a single piece of content. This might be an advert that you're familiar with. So it's the AA's campaign that's been running for, I think, probably about a year or so now. So they've got the TV ad with the dog dancing around and doing whatever, but that's just part of the overall campaign. It's the thing that people think about, but it's not the only thing. So what they've done is to take the dog, to take the look and feel, to take the messaging and carry it across lots of different channels. So some are more traditional advertising channels, like you can see the out of home poster, obviously brilliant placement for the AA, but they've also used things channels that they've got available to them that aren't necessarily traditional advertising channels. And that's something we're going to come on to a lot more. So here they've used their vans, brilliant. You know, you've got it. It's all around the country, use it. They also did some radio advertising, which ties in quite nicely with the music. So they've got that hook carrying throughout as part of the campaign messaging. And another slightly kind of, I suppose, between traditional and non-traditional channel, they did some Spotify playlists as part of this as well. So it just shows you just that illustration of how the campaign is all of those things coming together to hit people with the same messages in different ways at different times. So in my bit, I'm going to probably talk a little bit more about advertising, but as we go through, we will be pulling out some more L&D examples as well. So it's not all going to be, okay, great, but how do I do that? We will be giving you some more practical examples. So over to you guys for a question. It would be really interesting for us to understand why people in the room. We know that we've got people from lots of different types of organisations in different types of roles. So if you could let us know in the chat, why do you want to do campaigns? So is it whether it's something that you're already doing, why you think that it's a good idea, why it's working, why it's something you know you want to do? Just let us know. Well, if you know the sort of difference that you think that will make.
While everyone's thinking about that, I'm just going to attempt to make my screen a bit wider because Cassandra is saying she's struggling. So the wonderful world of tech means that I have to try and do this. So hopefully, is that okay, Romy? Does that all look all right?
Fine for me, but it was fine for me before. So somebody in the chat might want to. Okay, that's great.
Okay.
So campaigns to launch new learning plans. Yes, brilliant. That's one of our favourites. I think there's so much of a brilliant mix that you can have between campaigns and L&D. But just thinking about the type of what difference would doing something via a campaign make to the way that you do things, as opposed to the more traditional ways that you're doing. New ways of attracting people to take up training, great. I think I've got an example later on that might work quite well with that type of thing. Internal strategy, learning culture. Yeah, we've been having quite a lot of conversations around that at the moment. Oh, it's some brilliant things. Can we work on all of these projects? Yeah, you've all got some really interesting stuff going on. Creating a buzz around the learning. Yeah. Deliver longer term change reliably. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really, really important point, Tom, that you don't get that one hit, which actually is a spoiler for the thing that I'm about to move on to. Some brilliant stuff in there. I'm not gonna dwell on it, but we'll move on to why we think you should do campaigns. So campaign, basically, the reason we want to do campaigns is because our lives and our brains are really, really busy. we so rarely encounter something once and remember it and or act on it. And it's really, really important for people who, like a lot of the people that you're trying to communicate with, are surrounded by noise. And that, so, you know, if you think of the noise that has already surrounded you this morning, you know, it's what the people in your house are doing and what's on the radio and what's coming through on WhatsApp and what's on social media and what's on your email and what's coming through on a Teams chat behind this. There is just so much noise. So what campaigns mean is, firstly, that we can cut through that noise. It means that we can reinforce our message over time and touch points. We can make our message engaging rather than trying to have to fit loads and loads of information into one thing. And yeah, we don't have to rely on that one hit to achieve our objectives as well. So essentially, overall, that's why campaigns are a good idea. So we know they're a good idea, but what makes a good campaign? So over to you guys again. What campaigns have made you take action or learn something, think or do something that you wouldn't necessarily have done before that you saw that campaign? If there's example, if you're already running campaigns in your organisation, then brilliant, we'd love to hear about those. But also, you know, think about those advertising examples. Is there anything that you're like, yeah, that absolutely changed the way that I did something, or really, really spoke to me, or really informed me about something? Anyway, memorable, evokes emotion. The surprise, yeah, surprise is really good. I'm glad with the things that people are saying, because I said I hoped that there wouldn't be too much stuff that you didn't already know, you know, in the best possible way, obviously. But there's a lot of those sorts of things that we are going to come on to later on, I think. Surprising, unusual, emotional. Yeah, emotion's a really, really good point. Memorable images. Yeah. I think that's one of the key points, isn't it? You've got to get that memorable creative so that you get that standout. Making you laugh. Yeah, that's a really good example. Sandy, yeah, call to action. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Do you actually know what to do at the end of it? Yeah, dumb ways to die. I think I totally, if you're not familiar with that case study, then absolutely look it up. It is a classic, and it ticks a lot of those boxes of what people have been saying. I think let's move on to. I'm going to take it down a level from all of these very interesting and creative things, because at the end of the day, the first thing that you need to get a campaign right is a meaningful objective. Dull, but so important if you're going to get to that end point of something that is emotional and memorable and relevant. So it needs to be meaningful for two reasons. Ideally, it's going to be measurable so that you can evaluate your campaign and learn what you can change for next time, or ideally tweak it as it's running to improve it. And it also means you're going to be more efficient. So you know who you're targeting, so you're not going to waste your time, your effort, yours or somebody else's budget, going out really, really wide and trying to bring in everybody when actually you only need to be talking to the people over here. So let's just have a work through an objective and just see what difference that makes. So we want people to know about our health and safety policy. Okay, that might be an objective, and yet you could go with that, but you can make it a little bit better. So we want all colleagues to take the right actions around health and safety. So you've expanded it a bit better. You know that you are actually talking to all colleagues, and you know that you want them to take an action as opposed to just to know about it. But you can still improve on that. So if we want all colleagues to know that health and safety risks in their own workplace and call the health and safety hotline when they see any of these risks. So again, you know that your target group, you know that you're going to need to target a little bit more specifically because they need to know the health and safety stuff for their own workplace, not just generic health and safety actions. And you know that you've got something measurable because you want them to call the health and safety hotline when they see any of those risks. So that gives you something that you can use to gauge the success of the campaign. So how many people are calling that hotline? So objective, it's basic, but it needs to be there. This is the bit that is more essential than anything else, because if you don't get it right when it comes to knowing your audience, then you may as well not bother, really, a lot of the time, because you can, if you don't get it right for your audience, you can just alienate people, you can switch them off, you can spend loads and loads of time working up a campaign that you will think is absolutely brilliant, but just doesn't hit it for the people that you need to take that action. So the first thing to do when you're knowing your audience is to think about them. So don't assume you know them. Yes, you work with them all the time, and you probably think, well, yeah, of course I know exactly what they think. But there is always something in there that surprises you and gives you a new angle. So go back to the base and start with asking the question, who are my audience? So there's lots of questions that can help you with this. And in the resource that we'll supply for you after the session, there's some questions within the briefing template within that can help you with this. So start to build up a picture of who they are. So what part of your business are they from? How long have they worked there? Think about what their working day looked like. So where are they? What are they doing? What equipment are they using? Who are they talking to? When are they really busy? When are they really not busy? Really key to work out what motivates them, what annoys them, because that's the bit that will help you get to the heart of a message that's going to mean something to them. Same with what do they care about? And is it just one audience group? So, with that health and safety thing, okay, you could have broken down that a little bit further. You could have said all colleagues, but then when you look at it, do you need to do an extra message to new colleagues that wouldn't need to go to existing colleagues? Have you got field-based colleagues that will need a different message to office-based colleagues? So yeah, Rebecca's just put it in the chat. Something that can really help with this is thinking about building a persona, which is basically just another word for it is a pen portrait. So turn that audience into a person. Who are they? What does their day look like? Is it, okay, it's Rick, who's 35 and he drives to work in this way, and he works in this location 2 days a week, and he works in this location 2 days a week, and he gets really, really annoyed if I don't know, somebody's sitting at his desk when he comes in, whatever's relevant, but really get yourself into the headspace of that person that you're trying to reach. I think really importantly, if there is any type of colleague insight team in your organisation, then talk to them. Even if you think, oh God, they have absolutely nothing to do with what I do in my team, they're really, really useful. Either they will know a lot of this sort of stuff, or they will have channels that can help you to find out. And I think because of the types of people that are in those teams, they're always really, really curious to find out more themselves. So they're usually really willing to help if you've got that opportunity. I've just got an example here that I think just shows the way that going deep into that insight can really make a difference. And so this is British Army recruitment campaign, and when you look at some of their impact case studies, they do a brilliant job with really, really getting to the heart of the insight and doing something surprising that isn't what you think of when you would, if you went in and said, right, I'm going to sign a recruitment campaign for the army. It's not what they actually come up with after they've gone away, and they really talk to their audience, but also talk to the people that are already within the organisation to really understand, okay, but what actually are the benefits of being in the army? And so this is from their 2017 campaign when they drilled down into all of the insight. And there's a really nice case study about the way that they did the further study parts of this that I can drop into the chat later if anybody's interested. They realised that belonging was really, really important, and it was one of the main benefits that people felt about a career in the army. So they based this whole very, very simple campaign, very simple visuals, very simple message, but really impactful, and it gets through to that emotion. It increased applicant numbers by 38% with this campaign. They've since carried it on for other feelings. So when they focused on confidence, that had a really good impact. But it just shows the difference that makes when you really get into the heads of your audience and understand what really matters to them and what benefits they see. And it's that surprising things that you wouldn't necessarily see if you just sat down with a piece of paper and thought of it off the top of your head. I think this is the case study where I was saying to whoever earlier was saying about looking to recruit people internally, because yeah, this is an external recruitment campaign, but there's no reason that you couldn't take the same type of approach to looking at what you needed to get people to sign up for your training course. Because at the end of the day, it's getting people to sign up for something. It's okay, what are the real benefits for people around signing up for that training course? And you know, it won't look the same, but you could take a really similar approach in terms of gathering the insight to get to that end point. Next thing about your audience is, so you know who they are, how do they consume content? So firstly, in work, so taking back to, okay, what does their day look like? So what do they have access to? What are the constraints? So yes, you think about your traditional channels like email, like the LMS, like any staff bulletins, etc. But also think about their workplace. What are they surrounded by? One of their favourites is always posters on the back of the toilet door. You know, there is an opportunity for them to consume content there. Rebecca mentioned at the start, and she'll go on to talk about again, about using stickers in places around their workplace. But don't just think about how they do or could consume content within the workplace, because that isn't their preference. How we consume content at work is 90% of the time is something that is pushed to us in a certain manner. How we consume content outside of work is how we actually want to do it. So go back to that persona, go back to that audience and go, okay, but am I talking to people who actually spend 3 hours a day on TikTok and so would be much better reached by engaging little bite-sized shareable video clips? Is that something that we could look at? Are they people that will turn to YouTube every time they want to learn something? Are they people that will turn to Reddit every time they want to learn something? So if you just think about that, what is their preference in terms of content consumption, then the way that you deliver something, it's already more engaging, it's already more relevant to them. And also just think about what you've done previously to communicate to them. So what's worked, what hasn't worked? Is there anything that with a bit of a tweak you could do better next time? And talk to people around your organisation who are also communicating with that same audience to find out what's worked for them in the past. Still thinking about the audience. Something that we always like to work through to get to that, what does our campaign need to do, is looking at what the audience currently think or know about our subject. And a way that I've always thought about this is to look at think, feel, do. So you work through what do they currently think, feel and do. And again, this is something that will be pulled out on the resource that we'll send further on. And there's more detail about that in that. So what do they currently think, feel and do? What do you want them to think, feel and do as a result of your campaign? And then looking at the two of them together will bring your barriers and gaps. So a really good example of this was something that we did with one of our clients towards the end of last year, facing into the second wave of COVID. And they knew that people in their workplaces just weren't doing what they needed to with regards to COVID safety. And it's like, yeah, we all knew what we should be doing by that point. You know, we knew that we should be hand washing, we knew we should be keeping our distance, we knew when we should be wearing our mask. They just weren't doing it. So we worked through the think, feel, do. So what they were thinking was, well, I'm fine, my colleagues are fine. They felt that they didn't really need to follow every single guideline because they were kind of used to it by now. And what they were doing was they were just carrying on as normal. They're just like, well, you know, I know what I'm doing, nothing's happened to me, or, well, it's fine. What we wanted them to think, feel and do was to think from, I know I'm fine and my colleagues are, but to start thinking, okay, but there is always a bit of a risk, so I need to be careful. To feel responsible for looking after their colleagues and clients, and to do, well, to follow the COVID guidelines. And working through that, we did an insight session with them as well. We realised the barriers and gaps, a lot of it was social pressure. So that was something that whereas we would have thought, okay, well, we just need to remind people to do it. We really, really needed, as well as a reminder to wash your hands at this point and wear a mask at this point, we really needed to do something that also addressed the conversations that people were having in the workplace, so that they were felt more able to say, hang on, shouldn't you put a mask on, or what should we be doing here, to bring that social pressure through in there. And yeah, as Rebecca's just said in the chat, it also brought things that were for a benefit that sat outside the campaign. So in this example, we realised that there was a very basic physical barrier, that there just wasn't enough hand sanitizer. So working through that think, feel, do, and identifying those barriers and gaps just gets you those little nuggets of gold dust that are really going to make the difference, which in this case was that being able to address that conversation piece. Something else, I think, yeah, my final point on audience is to think about where your audience are on the journey that you want to take them on. So if you're familiar with more marketing terms, this is your customer journey. And I think thinking of your end user, whether it's a learner or whoever, as a customer, will always help you. So where they are on this will depend on what sort of project you're working with, but always work out where they are with regards to awareness, consideration, and action. You might not need to use all of the steps. You might be able to jump straight to action, but a lot of the time you'll need to start with awareness. Do they even know what on earth it is that you're talking about? Is it a completely new idea, a completely new project? If it is, you need to start earlier and with a different message to let people know what on earth it actually is, before they can move into the consideration stage, where they're kind of like, okay, I get what that is, but what's it got to do with me? Why is it relevant? What's the benefit? They might already know about it, but not see what the benefit is. You need to have made sure that they've gone through awareness and consideration to have any chance of being able to get to action, where they know what it is, they know why it's something they should do, and they know what it is that they're going to do about it. So I think something we were talking about yesterday was a lot of GDPR campaigns really fell along these lines. You needed to do quite a lot of work up front to let people know what on earth GDPR even was, before you could move to people understanding why that might be something that was relevant to them in their role, before probably like 2 years later, they actually did something practical about it. So again, this is stuff that's in the resource stuff with a little bit more detail. Moving away from audience, we know from a lot of the stuff that you guys have said, a campaign needs a strong message. And that's probably one of the things that you think of first when you think of a campaign. It's the message and it's the visuals. So there's 4 things that your message needs to tick off. And again, it's some of the stuff was what you mentioned up at the start. Make it relevant. Our brain really likes to be able to stick things together. It likes to be able to connect things. So if you can do something that it can immediately file with, okay, well, that links to that, and that, it's much more likely to stick than if it's something that is so out there and new that it's just kind of sitting there on its own and it doesn't stick to anything else. So make it relevant. Make it simple. It can be really, really tempting to have oh my God, this is such an amazingly clever idea. But if people need to decode it, it's just not going to work. And so, sometimes, again, it's knowing your audience. If you've got something that will be absolutely hilarious to data scientists and you are only talking to data scientists, brilliant, go for it. If there's any ambiguity, or if you think, oh, okay, well, I'm not sure how that will be interpreted, then just go as simple as you can. And especially if it's a new message, if you're really at the start of that awareness journey. What's in it for me? So always let people know what's in it for them. We need to know the benefits. Again, we're busy. We're inherently quite selfish. So we need to know what's worth our time. But this is where you go back to that insight, to tap into what those benefits, what actually will somebody see as what's in it for me. I saw a brilliant meme actually of going back to GDPR, where one of the benefits of GDPR is just being able to clear out your inbox, because you now know the rules that mean that people don't have to send you spam mail. It's not the message you'd have gone out with initially, but actually it might have been the one that got people to take action. And then finally, and again, somebody mentioned it earlier on, making sure that what do I do about it, that there's a call to action. You can have the loveliest campaign that people, you know, remember that, oh yeah, that was fantastic, I really remember that. Did they do anything about it? Not if you didn't tell them what they should be doing as a result of it. So, and if you know that you've got an awareness campaign, you might not necessarily have a call to action if you're really going to spend time going through that journey. But by the point at which you need somebody to do something, you need to be telling them what they do, how they do it, and making it really easy for them to do it, so that they don't just think that was nice and forget what happened. The other thing, as we've talked about earlier, was memorable creative. So I know that some of you have already popped in the chat earlier about what makes creative memorable to you, but if we could just take you back to that place, and what makes you remember a specific type of creative, of ad, of poster, of anything. What's memorable to you? Yeah, funny's always memorable. Funny, emotional, yeah. Music, yeah. Surprise, yes. The Cadbury's campaigns, they're a really good example of the what I was just talking about the decoding stuff. You can only do something that weird if you're Cadbury's or Coca-Cola. Because otherwise it would just be so lost on everybody. Who are these people? What are they doing? Diet Coke advert, the earlier ones. All vibrant, yeah, that's a really good word. Old Spice, different. Lots of love for the earlier Diet Coke break. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to go on and ask you another question, and I would love it if, when you see this next slide, please let us know, either pop a word or an emoji in the chat. What do you feel when you see this character, if you recognise it? Yeah. Wales, thanks. The new ones are worse. Oh, there's some good comments in here. Annoying brings a smile to your face. Yeah. Oh, some good emojis as well. Fantastic. See, I think I love, this is probably my favorite case study, because we all know that Gio Camparo is annoying, and I don't really think that yeah, press mute, absolutely. I don't really think that they ever set him out to be anything other than annoying, because he's a classic example of how emotion is memorable, and it doesn't always have to be the emotion that you think it is. Because when we think of emotion, we think, oh, it has to be really funny or really touching or wow, amazing. But actually, in this case, annoyance really works. And I'm not suggesting that you go out and annoy everybody in your organisations. Please don't. I mean, you know, if stuff's Marmite, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Oh, see, Laura, I like the meerkats. But yes, he's annoying, but he's been on TV for just over a decade. And he was actually voted the most annoying advert when he came out, but despite that, led to a 20% increase in customers and a 450% increase in brand awareness. So despite the fact that you will find him annoying, you know, I think someone said in there that, yeah, he is memorable because of that annoyance, because you go, oh God, and you immediately build that brand awareness. So it's just a really good example of how that emotion doesn't have to be one of the fluffy positive emotions that you first think of. And again, goes back to that kind of that belonging, confidence. It's not always what you think of that makes the creative memorable, but creative isn't the only thing that makes the campaign memorable. So maximize your channels. So I think probably my favorite marketing buzz phrase that I still use is being channel neutral. So often we will go into a project thinking, okay, well, this is a 20-minute learning module and we'll put some posts out, we'll put an email out. stop, go back to the beginning. Again, go back to your audience and work out what channel mix is best for them, where that's possible, because we all know, and I'm sure all of you within your organisation will have some stakeholders that have such a fixed view of it absolutely has to be a thing. You're not always going to be able to do that, but really go back to basics and think about that, what that channel mix could be, and think outside the box. So yeah, where there's more available to you than necessarily putting it in an email, putting it in a module. Go back to that point about how people consume content, how they like to consume content, what their day looks like, where can you put messages in their environment, where are they most relevant, where do people have time? You know, like, okay, it might be easy to put something in an email, but for most of us, that's one of however many emails that we receive on that day. And are we going to receive the message more from that email or from the sticker that's above the sink when we're washing our hands? So just think about the outside the box, and test and tweak during the campaign, which brings me onto my last point, which is evaluate and learn from your campaign. Always evaluate against your objectives and the performance of different channels where it's possible. You know, if you're advertising a type of training course, then see if you can track how many people signed up from a specific type of email, or from a microsite, or from, you know, just something that we don't do anymore is actually just somebody going around and asking, would you be interested in that? You know, it's a channel that probably would work really well, that kind of face-to-face sign up sheet. And yeah, actually it does match with what Rebecca's just put in the chat, people as a channel. So just see where your signups came from, where your interest came from. Look at different metrics, open rates of things, conversions. If you can, do a trial and control. And as I said earlier with the colleague insight team, if there's anybody within your organisation that looks after insight, data evaluation, even if they're not in your specific team, have a chat to them, because they might have access to tools that you can use that you don't necessarily know off the top of your head. So this obviously helps you to know how well your campaign's done and what you might be able to do better in the future. But it's also really, really brilliant for winning over your cynics, because with all of those more cynical stakeholders, you know that if you go to people saying, well, actually, we did it this time, it increased this by 10%, and it meant that we actually spent less money than we necessarily would have done, then you're going to be much more easily able to persuade them to take a different approach next time. So that's me. I'm going to hand over to Rebecca, who will take you through some specific case studies that we've worked on with clients.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Romy. Thank you. I'm just going to whiz through a couple of stories of case studies. I'm just aware that we'd like to keep a bit of time at the end for questions if you've got any. So if you have got any questions based on what Romy's been talking about, do pop them in the chat now, and we'll try and pick up a couple at the end. So I've got a couple of stories for you about organisations that we've worked with who've used a campaigning approach. The first one is a story about our client Co-op, a brilliant partnership with Co-op. And actually this project was a big transformation project from last year, and we worked closely with the Co-op team. In fact, we collaborated with the Co-op L&D studio, which was fantastic. So I can just sort of walk you through this story. So it was all to do with a project called Smart Cash, which happened in 2020. As you can imagine, lots of things got affected by the pandemic, and Smart Cash rollout was one of those things. Basically, it's Smart Cash is a kind of one-touch cash solution. You might have seen it in shops. They're like the boxes that sit under the till. And it's a really clever bit of tech, and it means that colleagues are more secure and the cash is safer. It basically goes into the box instead of having to go into a till and then into bags and then into an office and then into a safe. So it's it was a really positive change for the Co-op, and has been received really well. But the you know, it's a massive rollout for the Co-op, nearly 3,000 stores, as you can see, and that was new hardware, new software, and new habits for people. So they ran a pilot exercise with a few of their stores. We got some really helpful insights from that pilot project. And putting cash in a till, I mean, if you've been working the Co-op for a long time, well, working any retailer, you're given a £10 note, it's just absolutely ingrained that you put that note in the till. And actually, the Co-op found that what they thought was going to be a really simple change, you know, don't put the note in the till, put the note into the groove of this machine that's under the till. It's actually really hard because it's completely automatic behaviour. So it was hard to unlearn those behaviours, and large changes, system changes, hardware changes, they're not always welcome. It can be daunting for employees to learn a whole new set of processes and system changes. And the tech partners that the Co-op used, who did like the fitting of all the boxes, the installations, they actually had recommended at the start of the year, they'd recommended face-to-face training, because they said there's quite a lot to learn. You know, you really need to have face-to-face training to build that engagement, that familiarity. But obviously Co-op safety, the Co-op's priority was the safety of their colleagues throughout the pandemic. So it was just not possible, you know, COVID just railroaded all face-to-face training. So they came to us in March last year and said, we really need some help thinking quite creatively about how we can do this using digital channels, and you know, what else could we do? So we knew we wanted, well, we talked to the Co-op, it became obvious that we had to do something a bit different with them. And so the different thing that we did, well, in one of our early meetings, one of the project meetings, someone said, you know, it's simple behaviour really. You just have to put the note into the groove of this machine. And that conversation, so that there's a whole sort of idea that spun out of that conversation. Because we know that songs are really memorable. We know that music, you know, as humans, we're kind of programmed to react to that music. So we actually created a campaign that sounded like song, which had a familiar feel and had that kind of into the groove Madonna feel. So we commissioned a musician to write a sound-alike version of Into the Groove, and we changed the words to summarise all the benefits of the Smart Cash unit. So it's quite playful, and we felt that, and the Co-op felt that we needed something a bit different just to catch people's attention. So that became like the heartbeat of the campaign really, and it allowed us to create visuals and create a kind of brand around that song that covered the multi-channels. So there are engagement comms, things like coming soon clips, little GIFs, little looping GIFs that were on social media. We're learning modules on the LMS that really sort of highlighted the processes and the benefits, but we were trying very hard not to overwhelm people. And the idea of having this multi-channel delivery, very campaign-based delivery, is that you're not expecting people to do a half-hour learning module and memorize everything. So what we did, we sort of took out those key bits, those key behaviours, and put them in different places, put them into the environment. So that meant giving people the choice of a really high-level overview of what to do, all the way through to things like reference guides, where you've got all of the processes really laid out in a searchable form. So everyone had a real wide variety of content that they could get through. We even had stickers and the song on the radio, to the original Madonna songs, just to kind of nudge awareness and encourage people to remember Smart Cash. So there was a real sort of mixture, and I think that probably the success of the project came down to blending that digital and human delivery. So there are lots of different channels, digital channels, that the resources and the learning modules were held on. But we still, even though there's no face-to-face, I know that the Co-op were really keen to have a human on the end of a phone or a Teams call or a Zoom session, using those campaign messages, those campaign visuals to bring it all together, but really kind of making, sort of activating their networks in a way that allowed people to support each other. So that's just a Co-op story. Now for very different kind of story, and you might, well, for those of you who are based in the UK, you'll recognise this as Channel 4. So Channel 4 are one of the biggest broadcasters in the UK. Their remit is to be quite risky and to do things differently to the state broadcasting channels. So they're famous for taking risks, but they came to us a few years ago asking for help relaunching and representing their code of conduct. So their code of conduct was, I think it was, it used to be like a massive 60-page document, and the Channel 4 audience, going back to Romy's point about know your audience, they're quite, I hope they won't mind me saying, cynical journos. They couldn't really see actually why should we be watching our conduct when actually we're meant to be taking risks. But there was a campaign, so I don't know if those of you watch The Last Leg, which is on a TV show in Britain on Friday nights, and they do this thing about, is it okay? So they take a story from the news and they say, is it okay that President Trump has done this, or blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so we use this as the basis of a campaign. And the idea is that they reduce this massive code of conduct into 4 simple checks. And everything about this really talked to that audience, because it was about, what would their colleagues think, what would viewers think, and then if they're not sure, they had to check the code of conduct. So it was a real simple behaviour check. And the way they ran this campaign was over a series of weeks. So there were teasers. So instead of just saying there's code of conduct training on the LMS, there were teasers that it was very scenario based. So is it okay to accept these tickets? Is it okay to email this document home? Is it okay to buy the team a few drinks? So it was all really relevant scenarios and lots of grey areas that people, we'd heard from their audit, from their team, that people really genuinely struggled to make the right decision. And all the way through, it was the messaging was actually for us to be creative, to take creative risks. Our behaviour has to be impeccable. So all those messages were underlined throughout the campaign. So there were lots of accompanying images that were used as posters. I think there were screensavers. There were big digital things when you go to the Channel 4 building. There are huge images of Julian Assange on the digital notice board, and all of these created this really coherent campaign around conduct that was so far away from a sort of 60-page document. It just made it really relevant for people. So it was really successful, and yeah, really, really good story. So that's a couple of stories. I'm conscious of time. We're going to go on to just talking about some of the resources that we're going to give you. So we've talked about the theory, we've talked about a couple of practical case studies, and the next thing that you might be thinking, I'm sure, is, okay, well, how do I get started doing this in my own organisation? So these are, we've created some resources for you, and we'll be in touch with these for you to download. But also, we're just going to give you a few tips. I'm just going to hand back to Romy for a few minutes just to give you some tips around using the resources and making it work in your own organisation.
Thank you. Yeah, we realised that it could be an area that there's a lot of aspiration, but there's certain things that you need to get right in order to be able to make it happen. The first one, that from our experience, is engage all of your stakeholders as early as possible. So yes, that's whoever's involved in the project, etc. But also think about people like any channel owners that you might need to engage. If you're not part of the internal comms team, do you need to involve them? Any operational channel owners? Do you need to talk to your brand team if you want to take a different approach? Learn about the channels available to you, and related to the previous one, then connect with the people that own those channels as well, just to understand what the constraints are, what you can do, what you can't do, and most importantly, moving on to the next point, what their timelines are, because that's something that we see a lot of the time with campaigns, is that we can get very, very excited in the early stages and kind of, oh, we could do this and this and this and this. And then when it comes down to it, it's like, actually the business has given us 4 weeks to deliver this, which immediately knocks out a lot of the sorts of things that you want to do. So be realistic about the timescales that you've got, whether you can push things back to land later, or whether you just need to be a bit more realistic and go, actually, do you know what, that's going to take a lot more development time, or we haven't got the time to get that printed. Just understanding what those parameters are for you and your organisation. Use your budget and resource efficiently, and this is where campaigns can be brilliant, because once you've got a campaign image and messaging, then you can use that in so many different ways. So, you know, say for example, you start with a poster. Okay, so that's great. That means you've got a template that you can then use for lots of different types of posters, and you've also got messaging and images that you can use on an email banner or on a website, or turn into a little graphic to send round or to use in presentations. So look at what you've already got and how you can easily use that in other different ways. Know where your creative ideas will come from, and I think this completely depends on, again, on you and your organisation. You might be working with an agency like us, in which case great, that's what you pay us for, you don't need to worry about it. You might have an internal studio or another team that can do that for you, but if it's on you, then just know how you're going to do that. If you're like Rebecca, then you don't need to worry about it, because she will come out of a client briefing call with 6 different ideas for creative campaigns, and then, you know, that's great. My brain doesn't work like that. So know who the people are that you can talk to and have those creative conversations with, or know some techniques. So design thinking is a really good place to look for those techniques to help you get those creative ideas. Start with something as simple as like word association. What words do you associate with this subject? What song could you associate it with? What TV character? And start from there. And then finally, coming back to my point on audience, if you've got an opportunity to check in with your audience during campaign development, so that you can just get that sense check as to how they would interpret it, and know whether there are any changes that you need to make sure it lands in the way that you want it to, as you're going through. So I think that's it from us. Again, thank you to everybody for joining. I think we've got a couple of questions coming up in the chat. Please add questions in the chat if you would like to know anything more, or drop us an email on here. I think Sarah's also going to pop the resources page link in the chat, as well as it being on screen here, and there'll be an email following up there. So Rebecca, I don't know if you've seen any questions coming up while I've been speaking.
Yeah, well, there's a question from Ganeet, who's asking about have we got any top tips for creating a YouTube ad? So I think their objective is to get more students for their college. Is there anything specific to keep in mind when creating a YouTube ad? So I don't know whether, I mean, basically, I think there are, the templates will really help you, I think. So just understanding who your audience are and the kind of messages that work for them. But I'm just scanning through. There's a question from Sandy.
I think for YouTube, I would probably say just keep it short. Just that point of view of bearing in mind how much time people have got, and think about the environment that they're going to be consuming the content in. So are they all just things as basic as, are they always going to be able to have their sound on? How important is sound as opposed to visuals, and kind of getting the balance that way at a very top level. So Rebecca, will you come into? Oh
no, I think that's, I'm just conscious of time. And there's a great question from Sandy actually. Yeah, about, do you need to have a complete campaign planned before the first piece goes out? I know what I think. I think you do, really. I mean, I think you have to have at least the first phase planned, I would say. There might be things that come up as part of the feedback from the first phase that you run a subsequent campaign and you get feedback, and you might tweak it and do a second sort of phase. But I think generally you need to have quite a good sense of that implementation plan, really. So what's coming in October, November, December, so you know how it all fits together. What do you think, Romy?
Sorry, I'm typing on another question while you,
Oh yeah.
while you were answering on that one. What did
So, well, I was just saying about Canva. So Sandy was asking, do you have to have everything planned out, or is it okay to just put the first piece out there? I think for a coherent campaign, generally, I would say you need to think about, when you're thinking about that campaign idea, you need to be thinking, well, there's this event next February. How are we going to make this campaign come to life at the event? How are we going to make, okay, we've got this, you know, this Yammer campaign going out in November. So I think it's about working out what your channels are. And for a lot of organisations, I know you do need to have that booked in. So with some of the big organisations we work with, you have like 3 or 4 months in advance for getting into those particular channels.
I think it's having, you don't necessarily have to have your whole campaign planned out, but you need to have your messaging planned out. That's something that we will quite often do. Look at what messaging you're going to have in each phase. If you can have your whole campaign planned out, then brilliantly. But if you're like, oh God, but I need to get something out the week after next in an email, I know I'm then going to have time to develop the rest. Then get that messaging plan so that you know that you've got a consistent messaging stream, even if you're not entirely sure the channels that messaging is going to go into for the next phase.
I think it's the evaluation bit as well, isn't it? Like you need to sense that
learn
it's
from
working, learn from that first bit. So you might run a subsequent campaign and people reacting to the first, you know, Gogglebox style, people reacting to the first campaign, that becomes sort of self-fulfilling then. So there's lots you can do. I'm aware of time, but I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to pick up.
There's just another question in the Q&A, which was what I was looking at while you were talking before, about do you have any tips on how to word or lay out any learning adverts? We send these in emails and the goal is to make it sound like something people would want to do. I would say on that, it's keeping it simple and selling the benefits up front. Really, I think the thing I would probably do on that is literally just go into your own emails, look at the types of promotions that you receive and see what you can learn from the ones that make you want to do something as opposed to the ones that really annoy you. Keep it very simple. I would say go in with the benefits, because you want to try it initially, you want to grab somebody's interest. So you go in with your why is this something that I should do? You then give them a little bit more detail about what, once you've caught their attention, and then just always finishing up with that call to action. But that bearing in mind that those people are just really, really busy. And with emails, the brilliant thing is if you've got the opportunity, then test different subject lines, I was just going to say it, information in the email or whether people click away. So just use that opportunity to test as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's that, you know, if you can get a panel of people, if you're going to run campaigns in your organisation, you think it's helpful, try and get a network of people who represent different parts of your audience and occasionally send them things and see if they click on it. Anyway, listen, it's I feel like we've covered a lot, whizzed through various things, but I hope that was enjoyable and informative for everyone. It was really nice to see you all today, and do get in touch with us if you've got any other questions. Sarah's going to send out the bits and pieces on the email, so you've got some resources. And yeah, just feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn as well. So we often put news and articles on LinkedIn. So do seek us out if you liked what we talked about. Do seek us out on LinkedIn, and we can stay in touch through that as well. Okay, right. Really nice to see you all, or see your names. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Thank you.